So today I'm folding an alternate ending of Winter Lights, which was day one of Advent of Test 2025. And there's already a tutorial out for this one. I'm using a 64 division triangle grid that's diagonal. So grid lines perpendicular to the edges instead of aligned. And so I'm going to be folding rather quickly, and my goal is to get through the whole thing today. We're going to talk about some broader techniques for folding patterns with triangle twists. This is a fairly complicated one. It uses closed open and double open triangle twists in a structure. So this one has clusters of 4 triangles. The broader pattern that I'm folding today, Winter Chaos, has clusters of 4, where these clusters are the corners of the bigger clusters. And I'm also going to do a bit of story time while we're folding. But first I will get myself started by finding the center of the paper. And with that center, I'm going to pick here. Let's see, the centers of the triangles are on the grid lines through the center, and they are 2 spaces out from the center. So I'd pick on this grid line 2 spaces out. And I'll make it right-handed just because. And since this is a full-scale piece, I'm not going to be drawing on it. So I'll make sure to zoom in nice and tight. The center was over on this side, and I'll continue around adding new triangle twists. So yeah, this initial part already has a tutorial. I'm going to tell a story. And this is a more personal story than I usually share. I want to talk about, and I know, like, you're here to watch a video on origami, not to hear about the news or anything heavy. I just want to acknowledge that. But there's things happening that can't be ignored. And yeah, I want to tell a little story about my background and how this is impacting me. So, as you might know already, I grew up Mennonite, which is a fairly small denomination of Christianity, and it's not Catholic or Protestant. It's this third thing called Anabaptist. And the Anabaptism movement, it's not what you might think. It's not anti-Baptist. Anabaptist means rebaptizer. So this was a movement that happened alongside the Protestant Reformation. It took it a little bit further. So this is 500 years ago, almost exactly 501 years. And their big thing was that you shouldn't take the word of some religious authority on what the Bible says. You should read it for yourself and determine for yourself what is right, what is wrong. They came down pretty clear on the idea that killing people is wrong, even when they're trying to kill you, even when some authority tells you to kill them. That's the pacifism side. And a lot of people, both Protestants and Catholics, thought that this was going to completely dissolve society. This refusal to kill people, even when you're ordered to, even when you're conscripted to an army. And so the Anabaptists were hunted down and killed by the hundreds and thousands by both the Protestants and the Catholics. And one of the artifacts that came out of that time that is still a central part of Mennonite culture to this day is a book called The Martyr's Mirror. It's a very thick book telling stories of people who died for their faith. All the way from Jesus and the early Christians through this time in the 1500s, 1700s. And after 200 years of being hunted down and killed, a lot of these communities that were Mennonite, Brethren, Quaker, there's a whole bunch of closely related Anabaptist traditions. A whole bunch of these people and communities decided to move to the U.S., to the American colonies, is what they were then. And that is how my ancestors came to America. They came to escape persecution. They came not because they wanted to leave their homes, but because they felt they had to. And so that is something that I identify with. Like, my people are people who were persecuted and had to flee their homes. And then, I mean, of course, there were some really terrible parts of that, because when my ancestors came to the U.S., they weren't coming to an unoccupied land. They were sent out into the edges of the colonial territories and told to push out the local occupants. So there is pain there too. And then several generations later, and this is a piece of history that isn't commonly told. And the reason why I don't speak any form of German is because my great-grandpa was rounded up by American authorities and put in a work camp during World War I. And the community stopped teaching their children German after that. He was put in a work camp because he spoke German and wouldn't fight the Germans. And so this whole thing of rounding people up because of their accents strikes very close to home. Yeah, thanks, Rick, for commenting that you also have Mennonite heritage. And there's a lot of connections you can see, and even like connections between so Mennonite traditions basically are welcoming people, great cooking, excellent singing, beautiful quilts, pacifism, and it's of course there's a lot more to it. But yeah, there's a lot going on. So, okay, I've gotten to the end of what the tutorial for this pattern was. The next bit, I'm going to refer to my crease pattern, which I have a link down below. You can see the video where we collectively designed this together in one of these live streams. And you can get the crease pattern off of there. And so I'm looking at this cluster where the outer twists are left-handed. And that's the one where I'll connect an open triangle twist closely on these corners. Or I should say closely on one corner, and then the next corner, it'll be 3 spaces away. So 1, 2, 3 spaces, and then set up the new fold. It's the next open triangle. And flipping over, I'll turn this into a double open triangle. This double open triangle is in a position of 3-fold symmetry for the broader pattern. But we're not going to put in the 3rd open triangle twist until later, because this ring around the center, we are starting clusters, but not finishing them. And then my other cluster starts on the other side, but what I can do to help me find that cluster, so this pleat off of here is going to be the same as this pleat over here. I'm going to have those 2 closed triangle twists, and I'm not being particularly fussy about which way I go around in this pattern. because right there I was starting at the bottom of the stairs. And then another closed triangle, and that's sending a pleat down into these further parallel pleats. I'm going to let that open up. This next cluster, I have the same spacing. So with this one, with these corner twists, I have different spacings on different pleats. This one I have the same spacing, and in particular connecting here and here, you can see very clearly the difference. This one's the same spacing between the two, so probably would have been okay to flip over and then fold it. And then, excuse me, all the twists in this cluster are open triangles on this side. I kind of suspected that starting at the bottom of the stairs on the other side would lead to a friendly pleat overlap here, and it did. But that's, you know, something that comes after years and years of intuition, when you can clear your brain of everything else going on and get back to the and really pay attention to these tiny details. But okay, I'm gonna choose to go ahead and do my open twist on this side to determine the placement of the closed triangles. And that'll get me back to a repeat state where I can just do what I've done already and continue the story with two closed triangles close together up here. So I'm repeating, finding the second open triangle with that 3 space count out from this twist, 1, 2, 3 spaces out to the corner. And then double open on the back. So I was at the point in the story where my great-grandpa was taken by U.S. authorities during World War I. And growing up, this isn't someone that I really interacted with in my family. He was so much older that he had died by the time I would have been able to ask any questions. But it was always something that weighed on me. I tried to do a bit of research into it in middle school, never got anywhere with it. I know now that there is a memorial with all the names of people that this happened to, somewhere out in the Midwest. I don't remember exactly where. And yeah, this just always resonated with me that my people could be singled out for persecution, for mistreatment again, and add in the layer of identifying with people who have had to leave their homes and move somewhere new. So there's those layers. And then after high school, I took a gap year and lived in Peru for 8 months. And really got to know a lot of people there. Got to see that, I mean, really everyone wants home and safety and family, and like, people are people everywhere. It's really obvious and not that hard when you really look. It feels like something I shouldn't have to be saying, but everyone is people, everyone is valuable. And worthy of respect, worthy of love, and sure, people have different histories, people have different occupations, people have differences, but all people are worthy of respect. And we have way more in common than things that divide us. And yeah, so a couple years later, after I finished undergrad, I ended up marrying into a Mexican-American family. Morning, Zach. And like, even though my husband is a US citizen, was born here, like we are still having conversations about what would we do if a truck full of armed men showed up at our door. Because that is the state of things right now. And so for me, right now, the news is not just news happening somewhere else. It is deeply personal on a lot of levels. And yeah, one thing that helps me to focus and not get overwhelmed with it all is coming back and doing some folding, shoveling snow. I had a lot of snow to shovel recently. Like the last 2 days was basically just shovel snow and recover from shoveling snow. We had about 12, 14-ish inches of snowfall since Sunday morning. And we are responsible for clearing a 1/4-mile driveway. And yeah, Zach, this is the one that we designed together back in November on the alternate endings live stream. So now it's time to start another ring around the center. I'll pause the story, continue onwards. So from here, we can already see a bit of how the pattern is repeating. I've got these 2 triangles and an open triangle in both of these locations, and that's leading up into another pair of triangles. So off of this pleat, I'm going to have a space and then the center triangle of one of our original clusters of 4. And this is a ring around the center where we are going to be finishing clusters. That next overlap is the another corner of our initial clusters and an open triangle finishing that cluster. And yeah, we're just gonna work our way around. Whoop. Making sure the pleat is actually flat before I smash everything with the bone folder. Okay. And let's see, we already have a corner of the closed triangles cluster there. So we're going to have a center and another corner. The centers of those twists are spaced 3 apart. And then I have a choice of whether to start at the bottom of the stairs or jump to the top of the stairs. It's somewhat arbitrary. I'm going to choose to stay at the bottom for this time, just to see if I can get away with it. Because so many of our twists are a little further apart that you can often get away with it. And I'll do triangle reps when I need to put the next, or the second twist of the overlap goes with this open triangle on the back cluster. And then back up here, and I already have a corner. So center and the other corner have an extra space between them. Excuse me. And now we're back at the top of the stairs. And can continue onwards. So again, this is a ring around the center where we're completing clusters of 4. So continuing this story, I started to mention that folding tessellations is one of the things that helps me feel more grounded with all of the craziness going on. And the other thing that helps me feel more grounded is my church community. I go to my local Mennonite church, and just to give you a flavor of, excuse me, a flavor of how the church is reacting to all of this. Every week we hear back from people, members of the church, who have been part of a vigil each Friday morning in front of the ICE detention center here in town. And this week, the vigil is actually going to be led by members of our church who have been working for years and years with immigrant support groups. And of course, assuming it doesn't get canceled due to cold, because it is going to be a lot colder than normal this week. And when the food stamps were not funded with the government shutdown this fall, we, as a church, raised money to cover all of the members' food stamp benefits and then some. This is a community that's very aligned with seeing the problem and doing things about it. And so being part of that community is really helpful and helps me to actually do more, say more, risk more, because I know I'm not alone. And so if you're out there and you've been feeling alone in your grief, in your pain, in your anger, you're not alone. And there are things that we can do. I'm not 100% clear on exactly what yet, but connecting with each other is a really good start. And being able to do something that keeps you steady. I won't say exactly calm, but helps you stay more steady. Always helps. We can't be effective if we are overwhelmed. We can't be effective if we are panicked. And for me, at least, doing something with my hands, whether that's shoveling large volumes of snow or focusing on intricate folds in paper or mending the hole in my overalls so I have better ability to go out and garden when it comes to that season. Like these are all things that are helpful for me. And by the way, like, making things can be a form of resistance, either directly or indirectly. One of the things I participated in last year with church was sewing reusable menstrual pads to donate to people who need them in places where being on your period can mean that you don't go to school because there aren't safe and clean bathrooms to use. But having these reusable pads can help. And you never know what people will need, what you can make. And so having those skills, being able to make things, being able to grow things, I think is very important. Not just for your own mental health, but more broadly as well. So you never know when those skills will be needed. Okay, made it all the way around again. Time to start new clusters. And these are the same clusters of 6 triangles that we see in the center. So with 64 divisions, I'm going to get full repeats of the center. And I'd invite you to share in the comments what you've been doing, what's been helpful for you, any actions that you'd like to invite more people to join you on, anything you'd like to share. And of course, if you don't want to share things publicly, you're also welcome to send me an email. And the easiest way to do that, if you don't already get my emails, is to go to gatheringfolds.com and submit the contact form. For this set of parallel plates, I'm jumping down to the topmost layer because I think almost all of the twists are going to be on this side of the paper, and some of them are going to be closely spaced, so I do want those friendly overlaps. Yeah, thanks, Rick. So for those of you not looking at the chat, Rick says, thank you for sharing. We have many American friends and family who share concerns. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that's interesting symbolically about origami tessellations is that it's really literally physically demonstrating that all the parts that seem separate are connected. Whether that stands for people, for places, for all the natural world. Here we are making many twists from one sheet of paper, and yet they're working cohesively in a single pattern. And I find the symbolism of that to be pretty meaningful as we look at what's happening in the world and what kind of response we want to make to that, or what kind of response I want. I won't assume a broader we. Oh, and I'm also happy to answer questions about the folding process, like how I decide to do a particular thing at a particular time, like any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Okay, so that concludes this ring around the center. And now it's time for the next one. I'll go ahead and start off of here at the top of the stairs. And for today, I intend to keep folding, keep the stream going until I finish the piece. Let's see. I'm gonna jump down to start the next set of parallel pleats. And I think with this piece, I'm going to leave the border as is. I could probably fit another round of twists, but it's getting pretty close to the border, and I definitely don't want any partial twists. Oh, hey. Glad you're able to make it here today. Herditya, or I'm not sure exactly which part of your handle is your first name. Oh, whoops. I meant to start at the top of the stairs. Let's put that one back and start down here. Oh, Herdy. Yeah, glad you could make it, Herdy. So yeah, it's fun to see the repeat of the center pop up further out with all that chaos in between. I don't know if y'all heard that beep, but that was me turning off the space heater sitting beside me because I've spent a lot of the last 2 days outside in 20 or 12-degree Fahrenheit weather, and I actually don't need it to be super hot in here right now. and I was out a little bit earlier today in 8 degrees. Let's see, in Celsius, that would be, so 8 is 24 degrees Fahrenheit less than freezing, which would make around minus 15 Celsius, somewhere in there. Minus 14 to minus 15. Because we have our cat in the sunroom with the low temperatures below 15 Fahrenheit. She gets to be in the sunroom during the day. And it got super cold overnight. I don't know if it was because of the cold or if a bird flew into the window, but instead of normal windows with glass on there, we have like screen mesh and a kind of plastic film. That system was put in place by the previous owner of the house. Oh, Zach, I'm glad you like the pattern. And so this morning, that plastic mesh was pretty broken. Uh-oh. Oh dear. Okay. I'm noticing, this is interesting, that on this edge, there's a space and a half from this triangle corner to the edge. And on this edge, there's 2 4.5. I don't think I started in the center. That, well, happens to all of us. I maybe should have paid more attention to the crease pattern in the beginning and not just picked a random point 2 spaces from the center and made it the center of a triangle twist, twisting in whatever direction. That maybe was a mistake. But the good news is, since I used a perpendicular grid, I can just go trim the edges after, and they'll look the same. Oh boy. Yep. Oops, indeed. So let's see how far off I am on this side. And 4.5. Okay. So it shifted straight that way. Interesting. Interesting. And then the really interesting part is going to be deciding how much to trim off the other sides. But I can use the spacing for the repeats of the center as a reference. Yeah, because that should be consistent everywhere. Okay, so that is done. And yep, little off center, but at least it's a perpendicular grid. And I can say, okay, on these guys, it's 1, 2, 3.5, and trim it based on that. But yeah, I think every side except for this one is gonna need a trim. That, yep, very convenient that I used a perpendicular grid. All right, well, happy folding, y'all. And yeah, hopefully we can, I'm gonna say, hopefully we can come together to make the world a better place, because it needs it. All right, see y'all later. And yeah, happy folding.